Hey everybody, I am excited. I get to speak with Charlene Chua today. She is an author illustrator and has her debut author illustrator book coming out with Kids Can Press. You may recognize some of her work for as an illustrator. She has Amy Wu in The Perfect Bow, she has Going Up. This is a big deal. We get to see her book Hug. So hello Charlene.
Hello. Hi, Julie.
So I'd love to know in your words, what is this book Hug about?
About a girl who gives a hug to comfort her cat, and then she gets requests from like more and more animals to give hugs to them, and she tries to accommodate them as best she can. But the more she tries, the more the demands are made, and it's impacting her to the point where by the end she doesn't really cope very well with it at all.
Oh, I asked one of my little student friends, I said, do you have any questions for an author? And she wanted to know where your idea came from for this book.
Mhm. So the idea for Hug actually came about. I can't really remember what we were talking about, but I was talking to my husband about something, and then I remember I said, "Wouldn't it be funny if, like, I gave a hug, and then more animals came up to me and said, like, I want to hug too, and I want to hug too, and I want to hug too." And after a while, I'd be like, "Oh no, there's like too many of you," and I think it was kind of like a haha joke, but it was also kind of my own sense of frustration because I tend to do that. I tend to, try and accommodate people, and I'm pretty bad myself in like setting boundaries, and I have been in situations before where it's gotten to the point where I've just kind of had it, and I kind of have like the girl at an outpouring or of emotion, and that kind of scares people. And I sort of like, nobody really knows how to deal with it. So then I thought about it, and I was like, well, maybe this might make a good little story for kids that might feel the same way.
How long has it been since that first kind of spark of an idea?
Oof. Well, books take a very long time to come out. So this book is how's coming out on September 1st or 2nd this year. I believe I handed in the artwork to them last year around this time, and then I had been working on it for a few months before that, and so I think that the original idea for the book must have happened maybe in like late 2018 or something.
It was a long road.
Yeah, it tends to be, most of the time it's average like over a year for like a picture book.
It must feel so rewarding though when you're finally getting to that place.
I think so. I mean, it's nice to, you know, I enjoy the process of making the book. And then once it's handed in, though, I know that there's going to be so many months from the time that I finish my work to the time that the book actually goes out to the public. So I kind of tend to just like forget about it and then just move on to like the next project because I can't just be sitting around twiddling my thumbs for like 8 months waiting for the book to come out.
Is that funny for you? Like, we're doing this interview about a book that this was in your brain 2 years ago then. Right now, you're
Mhm.
working on these projects that are for the future. Is it
Mhm.
funny for you to revisit it? Are there
Mhm.
moments where you feel like maybe I wish I had done this with the project now?
I think I'm pretty happy with it because now that we're talking, I just remembered when I finished this project. So this is a bit sad, but so the book is, the cat that's in the book is kind of based off my cat Uno. And as I was finishing the book, unfortunately, she lived a very good long life, and she finally passed away at the age of 17 or 18. So yeah, towards the end of the book, I was like really sad because I was like, well, yeah, my cat just died. Um, looking back at it, it's a lot of mixed feelings for me because it's like it's nice to see the book done and stuff, but it also reminds me of like the final days that I had with Uno and stuff like that. So I don't really look at it. It's a special project because I don't really look at it critically and which I sometimes do. Look at books that have come out and go like, oh, maybe I could have done this better or done that better. But for this one, because of everything that happened, I don't really do that. I'm just like, oh, it's nice to like finally see it, and or this was like, this is kind of tough to do, but it's nice to remember.
Having your own goodbye in a way.
Yeah, I mean the book is actually dedicated to her, and right at the back there's you can actually see there's the dedication to Uno, and there's like a small picture of her. Yeah, I was gonna dedicate the book to my husband, and then after she died, I was like, "Do you mind if I dedicate it to my cat instead?" And he was like, "Yes."
Your career is going pretty well, so I feel like he'll have another book. Right?
Yeah, that's what I told him. It's like I'll write you another book someday. So fingers crossed that I get another book published that that won't coincide with another one of my cats dying, so I can like dedicate it to like my husband.
Well, okay, so you opened the book. This makes me want to ask you, what is your favorite page in there? Would you show it to us, or one of your favorite?
The first couple of spreads are kind of nice because the I kind of subtly also wanted to talk about there being different kinds of hugs, because there are like fun hugs and then there's like meaningful hugs. So the book starts on like meaningful hugs, where what happens is first the girl is petting her cat, and then it like chucks up a hairball, and then and then the cat goes like, ugh, I don't feel well. And so the next spread is the girl asking, do you want a hug? And the cat going, okay, and thank you, because the hug makes the cat feel better. And then as more and more animals come on, and the hugs get sillier, and sometimes a little bit like suspect. I like the spread with the tiger, because at some point a tiger shows up, and the tiger goes like, I need a hug. The girl is like, are you sure you just want a hug? And the tiger's like, yeah, I want a hug. And then something happens, which is not really a hug. so I kind of like that, because I was like, naughty tiger, you are bad.
Obviously, you've taken what is like potentially a sensitive subject and you've
Mm-hmm.
tried to approach it in a comedic way. What was that like to try to find the right story in order to do that?
I don't really know what I, really tried to. I did want to like, write something that when I wrote it, I thought, yeah, this is a little bit weird, because usually hug books are about like, oh, hugs are so nice, hugs are special, we all love hugs kind of thing. So this book actually presents the story and, the concept of like hugs and them, potentially being overwhelming. In a somewhat different way. So I was kind of worried about it, but I wasn't, at the same time, I wasn't really thinking about how do I do this so that people understand this and that. So, I pretty much just wrote it really organically. This is actually, I think, what I showed the editor that then decided to acquire it. It's very untraditional for, you know, for children's publishing, as far as I know. Normally what we do is create a dummy or like a mock-up of the book, and then that gets sent to an editor, and if they like it, they usually have comments, and is back and forth and stuff and changes. But in this case, I happened to like show the editor this, and it's really, really rough. And that's basically my first draft of the book. And I don't think you can see it very well on screen, but it was like pretty much a chicken scratch doodles. And those doodles are pretty much how I wrote it. It was like probably 2 or 3 drafts for this, and it's completely not usual. Normally there's like over 10 drafts. So after that draft, then I went straight into doing, these are like Heidi sketches of like of the book. So you can see that these sketches that I did were,
Oh,
uh, they were neater, but the girl looked different. So this is in the final draft, I think.
so what programs do you use to do your illustrations?
I work in several different mediums, and quite a lot of the books that I do have been done digitally in Photoshop. But recently I've combined, traditional media like watercolor and color pencil together with touch-ups and editing in Photoshop. So Hug is actually mostly traditionally painted, and the the artwork is the artwork is painted with a watercolor on hot press paper, and then with so like this is the page that I showed earlier of the girl hugging the cat and the dog. So you can see that the artwork is painted pretty much as one piece on a piece of paper, and then for the final artwork, the background was added in Photoshop with another scanned texture, and the bottom shadow was also added. It's a painted swatch, but it was like digitally added in Photoshop. So that's pretty much what I did for Hug. Same thing for the other book that came out before Hug, Going Up. A lot of it was painted on different sheets of paper. This is another page that was painted.
Something I really love
There's,
about the girl and that cat is that
Mhm.
the stripes. It's like they're in sync. They're a team.
Yeah, I never really thought about it that way, that the girl and the cat were in sync because they had stripes.
You're subconscious though, like those two are a pair, and those kind of things show up in your drawings.
That's true, that's true.
Is there anything that you didn't really like as much, getting to be both author and illustrator on this book?
I think that authors are expected to promote their books more than illustrators. Even though the author and the illustrator for a picture book, in terms of creation, I think we are quite equal. Um, you know, we are co-creators of the book. However, once it comes out into the world. Generally, I feel that the weight of promoting the book and people getting excited about whose book it is, that kind of tends to fall on the author more than the illustrator. So being the author illustrator now, it's it's been a bit weird for me because I'm so used to saying, hey, my new book is coming out, tag the author, it's by this person, and now I'm like, oh, I don't have anybody to tag, and it's like it's me. So it's a bit of a surreal experience.
I'm curious, how has the process been in the past with you being an illustrator, and how much do you talk to the authors? Because I feel like you're connected to the editor more, right?
Mhm. Yeah. For the usual picture book creation process, I have very little interaction with the author during the process. Um, Publishers tend to favor that approach, and I think I do as well, because it's a little bit like having a child go to school, like if you imagine that the story is like a child, then the author has created the story, but now the you know the child's story is going to go to school and develop further. And if you, as the parent, follow your child to school and sit there all the time, making sure that they learn in the right way, they're not actually going to develop, in a way that they should be allowed to develop. So I think the relationship between author and illustrator in creating picture books under normal trade publishing, it's similar. So when I'm doing my part of creation, usually the manuscripts that I've gotten from the publisher, they are well written. So I have everything that I need and I understand what the author is trying to convey. So I kind of bring that to the next level by creating illustrations that convey and further the story. Once the book is done and out, I've contact. So for some of the authors, we have a bit of a relationship afterwards. We've emailed each other or send each other like tweets or stuff on Twitter or Facebook or something. If I'm illustrating a book with an author again, like I'm working, I've done Amy Wu in The Perfect Bow. I worked on the sequel with the author Kat Jiang, Amy Wu and Patrick Dragon, which comes out in December, and we will be working together again on the third book in the series, Amy Wu and the Warm Welcome. So when it's a book that goes a series like that, then I think it's a little bit different because now you're kind of you have an established relationship and you can collaborate a little bit, but we still don't talk to each other every day and go hey, wouldn't it be cool to do this, that, and the other thing.
My students love Amy Wu and The Perfect Bow, and
Mm-hmm.
they are always looking for the little kitty cat in the pictures, and oh no, you have to go back a page. I want to see what the cat's doing. So lovely little joke illustrations you have in there. Something I'm curious about is what do you hope the kids will connect to the most?
I hope that in Hug, kids will be able to relate to the girl's emotional journey, because she basically goes from being nice and wanting to give hugs to a point where she's I'm so overwhelmed and I can't take it. And as a child, as an adult, it's difficult to recognize and reconcile and perhaps act appropriately on those emotions. And as kids, as readers, I hope that they can, if it doesn't connect with their life circumstances, then it's fine. Maybe they can just enjoy, the funny animals in the book. But if there are any kids that sort of read the book and think that, hey, I feel like that sometimes, or somebody at school is like that or has done that, or even maybe an adult in their life has done that, then, or acted that way, perhaps they, could use the book and the story as a way to facilitate more conversation about that scenario, so that they don't, they can talk about it and deal with it and not grow up to be adults like me who can express themselves and then get into scenarios where it's it's too much.
Boundaries, getting older.
It's probably better to be able to to realize what you're doing and develop the skill to set healthy boundaries than to only realize it in once you're an adult and go oh no, now I have to get used to doing this.
Or you need to send an email that says, no, I don't want to do this thing. And you don't want to feel guilty about it.
Yeah, that's really important, because I think a lot of us, a lot of, especially for women, I think we have, my generation has grown up with being used to that, and maybe not giving a firm no, or having to apologize and give lots of excuses for turning down things and saying no. And that's unhealthy, because you feel that guilt, and you shouldn't have to feel guilty about putting your own needs first, because ultimately that's, you shouldn't be selfish about it, but you do need to take care of yourself before you can take care of others.
I like that you're tackling these in picture books because this is such a great way to start talking to kids about this. You can't just sit down with a 3-year-old and do that, but you can show them a picture
Mhm.
of a cat and talk to them about whether the cat wants a hug or not.
Yeah. Um, I mean, I have to say that I'm very appreciative that my publisher decided to acquire this book and that they more, 90% allowed me to keep my vision for the book and that they understood, you know, perhaps better than I did, what I was trying to do with the book. And I really, really love what they came up with for the book. So I'm not sure whether it was my editor or somebody else, but they basically summarized it, in the front flap and on the back cover, whereby the front flap says, um, hilarious look at the joys and perils of hugs. And at the back cover, it says, sometimes a hug is just what you need, and sometimes it's just not. So I didn't come up with those words. My publisher did. So I'm not sure who did, but whoever came up with those words, thank you. Thank you so much for summarizing my book in a way that I never could myself.
I know you grew up in Singapore. You're now in Canada,
Mhm.
based in Ontario. And I'm really curious if you feel like growing up in Singapore has affected any of your like illustration or your writing and creating, and if you think you'll do any kind of picture book that's like really specifically influenced by that.
I think it's definitely influenced me to some degree. Growing up in Singapore during the 80s, we had it's not perfect, and the cracks are beginning to show now. But during the 80s, we had a very strong messaging to as children about living in a multicultural society. So it's always been second nature for me to depict children, particularly children and families, with more than one ethnicity or cultural background. Uh, and I think that has come in handy when, during this time. And really, it should have been, it shouldn't have just been like recently, but in the last 10, 15 years, I think that, children's publishing has recognized that it tends to only focus on a very narrow, set of characters and from cultures and backgrounds and ethnicities. So there have been like a lot more steps, or more initiative to make it more inclusive to different characters and stuff. When it comes to writing a story that's influenced or set in Singapore, I do have one story that I wrote which is very influenced by my own family, and I would like to set it in Singapore, but it's not really focused on the location. So it might be a bit, if it ever gets published, it'll be it'll be interesting to see whether anybody even notices that it's not in Canada or the US. But at some point, yeah, it would be nice to do a story that is very focused on visually on an aspect of Singapore. Yeah, I think it would just be nice, but I guess we'll see. For the longest time, I don't think anybody really tried to, because it was seen as like, well, this is a location that's so far away that nobody really knows about, and to this day, people still think it's in China. But um, but hopefully, as things change and kids get, kids are curious about different people in different places, and I've noticed recently more books coming out that aren't set in North America and aren't just like, ooh, look at this, exotic thing somewhere else. They're more authentic stories about people, characters that just happen to live in somewhere else, that's not North America. So it's encouraging to me because it signals that publishers are willing to publish books that aren't just based in generic, North American suburbs, um, and that in turn gives me a bit more confidence to like propose a story that's set in, the Singapore that I grew up in, sometime in the future.
I hope you do it.
Thanks.
What are you excited for coming up?
Um, there's a bunch of books that I've illustrated that are coming out next year. So I think of all of them, there is a book coming out in fall next year. It's a Valentine's book, but it's coming out in fall. It's a very special story. I really, I love every story that I work on, but I love this one particularly much. And I put a lot of emotional effort into it, probably more than was healthy. It's called Love Violet, and it's by Charlotte Sullivan Wilde. It's coming out next fall from FSG for uh, Strauss and Giraud, I think. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one coming out, and as well as all the other books that I worked on coming out next year. I I don't know how I'm going to promote them. I know my friends are probably kind of like sick of me saying like, "Hey, I have a new book out," and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah."
Well, I'll make sure that we definitely share stuff here on Canadian Picture Books because I've started following you. Definitely very interested in your work, and I'm happy to do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been a very fun interview.
Oh, I'm glad. Yeah, just recently I've decided I want to be doing a lot more of this. So thank you for being one of my very early interviews as I kind of figure this out and get the chance to promote authors here in Canada because I think it's important.